So we really looked at the housing need. Other work we're obviously doing is on housing market assessments, which is something that government requires us to do. The relevant housing market is for the Northern Peninsula, which is North Cornwall, Torridge, North Devon, West Somerset, Exmoor National Park. So it's very much the northern part of the southwest region. If you look at the relevant papers, it's very much the bit left over once all the city regions had been taken out. Very much, it was classed as a polycentric area, meaning that there was no one big sort of city in the centre. It was just a series of sub-markets. We're working to actually look at what the housing demand and supply issues are, where the key pressures are, and things like second homes, tourism, and that will be some of the issues coming out, but it is still work in progress. But that will in practice inform where the supply and demand for housing aren't fitting together properly, and consequently we should tailor our housing policies and the housing strategy for the district to actually try and address those needs, to make sure we're enabling the houses that the market needs to be built. And that will be obviously the type of accommodation, as well as the size, location, a whole range of different things coming forward. We don't know what the answers are going to be, but it will tell us, hopefully, where we should be building, what we should be building. Also doing work at the moment on strategic viability assessments, which sounds technical, but in practice, it boils down to government says schemes or developments of 15 houses or more, you can ask for a proportion of affordable homes. We're saying, or we need to justify any departure from that, and the vast majority of the housing that we build is on sites of less than 15. So we're not allowed to ask for a proportion of affordable within those schemes. Most of the housing, the majority of the applications are for less than 5. We will get 1 or 2 big applications a year, but the threshold of 15 probably means we miss 2/3 of the houses. We can't get any affordable out of them at all, unless it's because the RSL has applied. What we're therefore trying to do is come up with a justification across this housing market area to, 1, lower the threshold from 15, maybe down to 5, maybe lower. We don't know what the results are going to be. And secondly, if we can justify that it won't affect viability, increase the 25 or 35% we're asking for to a higher figure. What we need to demonstrate is that it will be viable within the development. What we aren't going to do is undermine development altogether. And without pointing the finger at anyone else, South Hams district in South Devon are asking for 66% affordable housing, which sounds great, and they're actually building very few houses each year. So 66% of nothing is nothing in practice. The affordable housing they are providing is all public subsidy led. There's no grant-free housing at all. Again, a higher threshold, but whether that's the right approach is up to you. From my point of view, not building anything is just making the situation worse. But it's not for me to comment on South Hams' policy. No. They're not the only ones. But yeah, so North Devon, we would rather actually have the housing built, and we are building more houses than the structure plan requires us to. So we're keeping ahead of the strategic targets we have, because we need housing. We're getting an increasing amount of affordable housing within it. We'd like more, but at least we're hitting our targets, which is more than some other authorities have. Moving on slightly from some of the housing into other sustainability issues. As a district, we've got a series of sustainability objectives and indicators. When I prepare the local plan or other sort of planning policy documents, we always need to do a sustainability appraisal, which means we look at the wording of the policy against a whole series of indicators and objectives and say, what would the implication be here? How could it be made more sustainable? And one of the key questions we would ask is, providing a range of housing types to meet the requirements of all sections of the community, including those in need of affordable housing. So all of our policies in draft, and that would include development briefs and other supplementary planning documents, we would ask the question, is it meeting that objective? If it isn't, or if it could be made better, we need to make sure we've got the wording right. So affordable housing is only one of the sustainability indicators. There's 18 altogether. Obviously landscape, biodiversity, fear of crime. There's a whole series of indicators. All policies would have to be considered against all of them, but it will certainly be flagged up with any policy document that affordable housing and housing need is one of the issues that within North Devon we haven't got any grant-free affordable housing that's met any of the ratings. Obviously we mentioned that the Oak Meadow development had public subsidy into it. Anything that's got housing corporation subsidy or any other public subsidy must achieve either an Eco Homes Very Good since 2006 or Code Level 3 of Sustainable Homes from 2008. So if public subsidy's in, there's a minimum level of greenness that new developments must have. But grant-free ones, in other words, where the developer's providing 25%, we've not had anything that's achieved any rating anywhere. So because it's costing more, the developers just aren't willing to do it.
What were those ratings that are required if there is money in it?
Oh yeah, we've got Eco Homes Very Good, and I understand that's been in place since about 2006, but will be superseded by Code Level 3 in the Code for Sustainable Homes from 2008. I'm not exactly sure of the dates, but that's the gist of how it's going to work. We're told that all homes, not just the affordables, have to be Code Level 3 by 2010. Again, I'll see that when it happens.
When you say all homes, but that's not new builds, that's every...
Yeah, I understand it. That will be the pledge from the government that it will be, well, that will be all new homes. That's my understanding of it. Because at the moment we're saying anything with public subsidy has to be Code Level 3 now. So it will be all new all new homes will be Code Level 3. Yeah, existing dwellings, as a planning department or as a council, we've got no control over. Therefore, the private individual who put the insulation or whatever in, we can't do anything about existing housing stock, which makes up sort of 95–99% of the housing. We can only control a small amount of the new build.
If the old houses were then going to be sold, would you have any control at that point in
No.
when they're going
Only if they need planning permission.
right, to actually, in order to sell them on?
Well, yeah, no, we wouldn't have any control over existing houses. Once it's built, planning is very much out of the picture.
The only thing that might affect that in the future is the home buyers report, although that's really just a very weakened form of what it could be now, unfortunately. So that's not necessarily going to make much difference in terms of how environmentally friendly your house is when you sell it or buy it.
There are grants for things like cavity wall insulation for people with lower incomes.
Oh yeah, it's only
And solar power.
councils as a council has very much been promoting the energy efficiency because it's reducing the amount of energy you need in the first place. North Devon and Torridge, you both have a lot of fuel poverty, which I think something like 10% or more of your income being spent on fuel. It's a big issue, particularly with some of these low income households. And particularly with some of the old cob buildings which take a lot of heating.
Areas without mains gas that are relying on electricity.
So it is a local problem that we need to, well, it is, like I say, we need to look at. It is seeking to be addressed, but there's a real problem out there.
And what you were just saying about the Code Level 3 stuff.
Yeah.
If someone is applying for planning permission to have like a large extension, would just the large extension need to be Level 3, or would they need to then make the whole house?
At the moment, it's only new dwellings that we've got any control over.
Oh,
Extensions,
we
aren't extensions. At the moment, we can't do anything.
No.
However, building regulations, when they're improved, may be able to, because they have to look at SAT ratings, which is to do with the insulation around the windows and things like that. But purely in planning terms, we would have no control over extensions, unless the government changes the rules.
There are some issues with what you were saying, because the amount of glass in extensions and stuff like that is being limited for the same sort of reason.
Yeah, something I want to comment on. We certainly have got some design policies that can influence things that we can't necessarily require in it. In fact, if I come on to that now, we've got a policy in the adopted local plan, so its development plan carries significant weight, which says commercial and industrial developments of 500 square metres gross or more floor space and residential developments of at least 10 dwellings will only be permitted where they incorporate the appropriate sustainable principles set out in a table. In other words, all development above a certain size must show that they've taken on board sustainable design.